What's up, guys? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. Today we're going to be breaking down a recap of the game between the Seattle Dragons and the DC Defenders. But if you guys are looking for a full recap of the game, you can actually check out, I have a replay of the entire game in a condensed format. Click that link in the description there. And if you guys are looking for XFL content posted daily, hit that like and subscribe button for everything that's happening around the XFL. But anyway, not going to waste any more time. Let's get started right away. Alright guys, so as I said, we are breaking down the game between the Dragons and the Defenders. Final score in this one, DC 31, Seattle 19. Now, this was the highest scoring game on the week, and we learned a lot from a fantasy perspective from these two teams. There's still some mysteries surrounding how things are going to continue to play out, but let's kind of break down team by team, position by position, and just see where that goes, and then we'll give an overall breakdown of what we've really learned from these teams compared to what we were expecting. So let's begin with the Dragons. We'll look at the quarterback now. Brandon Silvers went 21 for 40, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Ended up with a decent day with the exception of those 2 interceptions. Almost had a third one near the end of the game. So really kind of what we were expecting from Brandon Silvers. Decent passer, but is just known to make mistakes. Now, near the end of the game, he tweaked his ankle and actually didn't finish the game. BJ Daniels threw the last pass. Now, it didn't look too serious in the moment, so there's definitely, good chance that Brandon Silvers will be ready to go for his game in week 2, but monitor that situation. Definitely someone to keep an eye on because quarterbacks are so scarce in this league right now. You're going to need to roster every starting quarterback, so BJ Daniels is the starter. Keep an eye out for him. All right, jumping over to the running game. Now, we knew that the Seattle Dragons were going to want to run the ball a lot, but what we unfortunately learned is that they're going to try to run the ball a lot with 3 different guys, which is really bad for fantasy. But I do think there's a few things we want to take away from here. So we just look at the rushing carries. Gardner had the most carries, but he only had 36 yards. He looked okay. He had a few decent runs, but then he also had that fumble near the end of the game that actually basically lost them the game. So I'm not sure if Jim Zorn is going to hold that against Gardner, but overall, I would say of the 3 backs, he definitely looked the slowest and just didn't have nearly as much elusive power and speed to his game. So while he was listed as the starter and was giving everyone hope that he would end up being the best running back there, I think that he actually tanks the most in value. When we're looking, Kenneth Farrow actually looked, in my opinion, he looked the best. He was the most elusive out of the backfield and also had 4 targets, 4 receptions for 14 yards, but finished the day with 7 attempts for 41 yards, had a long of 19. And then Trey Williams ended up getting the touchdown, but even that wasn't, it was good, but the Defenders' defensive player just completely slipped and missed a tackle and let him walk right into the end zone. So Trey Williams had 3 carries on the ground for 16 yards and 5 targets, 4 receptions, 27 yards in that touchdown, as we mentioned. So overall, I think Kenneth Farrow is going to be the best back to own here, but it's definitely going to be a committee. Hopefully it turns into more of a 2-headed committee with Kenneth Farrow leading the way on the ground and Trey Williams coming in for those receptions, but we'll see how much Gardner is involved going forward. And then looking at the receivers, as we had kind of predicted, it was going to be a little bit of a mess, but Austin Prohel definitely stood out above his peers here. 10 targets, 5 receptions for 88 yards, 2 touchdowns, including that long 57-yard score. So Austin Prohel has definitely elevated himself above every other player in this wide receiver core here. Now, we didn't get to see Kasen Williams. He was hurt, so that will definitely throw a little bit of an interesting wrench into how this plays out next week. But overall, Austin Prohel is a top waiver wire priority if you're in need of a wide receiver this week. You can't ignore 10 targets. Dontez Bird also looked okay. 5 targets, 2 receptions for 32 yards. Alonzo Moore had 2 near big plays, but both couldn't come down with either. Only ended up with 1 catch for 5 yards. And that was pretty much it. Keenan Reynolds, 7 targets, so a lot of targets, but only 2 catches for 5 yards. Just didn't look pretty sloppy in his routes, and overall it's still a little bit rusty. So definitely we'll see how this plays out, but right now Austin Prohel is the guy you want to go look at, and then Dontas Byrd, I guess if you need a backup guy here, that would be who I would call the wide receiver 2 going forward. Nothing really from tight ends. Colin Jeter had 1 catch. He had 4 targets, but only 1 catch for 6 yards. Evan Rodriguez looked to be the better tight end. Had 2 targets, 1 reception, and 22 yards. I think Rodriguez will be the best tight end going forward. Ben Johnson got hurt near the beginning of the game. Not sure the severity of the injury. All right, and then on the defensive side, as we kind of expected, Seattle definitely had a pretty decent run defense, but wasn't able to slow the defenders down and then enough, and then the defenders overall just had a better team all around. All right, let's jump over to the defenders though and look at Cardale Jones. 16 completions on 26 attempts for 235 yards. Also had 28 yards on the ground on 9 attempts, so definitely getting a little bit of work done with his legs. 2 touchdowns as well, I didn't mention that. So very good performance from Cardale Jones. No huge mistakes. Definitely missed a few throws that he could have made, but no interceptions, no fumbles on this one. That's what you're wanting to see in the XFL. I think Cardale Jones had a very solid performance. All right, jumping over to the running game. A little bit disappointed on this one, but as I mentioned, the Dragons had pretty good run defense in this game, and I think this is going to where we are going to start to see where there's only going to be a few running backs that actually carry consistent week-to-week value. And even though Jhurrell Pressley only went 12 for 31 and also followed that up with 2 receptions for 18 yards, so not a great fantasy day, but compared to some of the other teams in the XFL, seeing a team that only has 2 running backs that received carries and one that's really just a true runner, Donnel Pumphrey only had 4 attempts for 5 yards. He also had 3 targets, but only had 1 reception for 3 yards. So Pumphrey looked a little bit sloppy in this one. I expect them to start to use him more as that satellite back. He's supposed to kind of be that guy, just his size and frame. He's built for catching the ball more so than running, whereas Jhurrell Pressley, on a few runs that he actually had the ability to, he wasn't getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, he looked really good. And again, we're looking for consistency, volume, and the ability to score points. So Jhurrell Pressley is going to be one of your better buy lows this week if people are already panicking on the running back in DC. I still really like Jhurrell Pressley a lot. He looked to still have that same explosiveness and burst that he had in the AAF. And again, we're just looking for guys that are going to get a lot of touches, and Pressley is going to get a lot of touches. Look for him to rebound again in the coming weeks. All right, looking over at the receivers, we'll start with Rashad Ross. Now, he only had 2 targets and 2 receptions on this game, also had 1 carry for a -1 yard, but he had 52 yards, including that 31-yard touchdown play on 4th down. Looked phenomenal, and the 2 catches that he got, I don't know why he didn't get more targets. That's something that we'll have to continue to dig into, but overall, if anyone's panicking on Ross, I think he will continue to see his value go up. I'm not worried about him at all. Eli Rogers came in and surprised after showing up as the 3rd receiver on the depth chart. I just don't think DC really cared how they laid their depth chart out. He was Cardale Jones' favorite target, had 6 targets on 6 receptions for 73 yards, no touchdowns on this one. He even got targeted once on one of their conversion tries. Malachi Dupree, 4 targets, 2 receptions, 14 yards. Timmy Cobbs, 1 reception, 14 yards. Not much there outside of Ross and Rogers. Now, when DeAndre Tompkins gets back, that'll throw a little bit of a wrench into this, but overall, I think he just ends up taking over Dupree or Cobb's role. I think Ross and Rogers are going to be 2 of the most solid guys you're going to have week by week, and if you have either of these guys or both of these guys on your team, you're going to be pretty happy with that. And then jumping over to the tight ends, Khari Lee had that the first touchdown for Cardale Jones 1 catch for 39 yards on that trick play. Now, I think this is going to be an interesting take. Well, I should say also he did have another target that didn't get registered because Cardale Jones overthrew him so much, but it was near the end zone as well. So Khari Lee is definitely going to be one of those tight ends that if he gets you a touchdown, you're going to be very happy with your performance, and otherwise you're probably going to be disappointed. He's not going to get a lot of targets or receptions just based on the way that this offense looked on in the opening game. That was kind of what we expected from a lot of the tight ends. So I would say right now with how new the league is, if you are in a trading mood, Khari Lee is definitely someone that you can put on the block and try to see if you can trade up either for another player from another position that you really need, or try to sneak in and grab like a Nick Truesdale that's going to see more consistent volume from week to week. We'll get into that in our trade talk video here tomorrow, but overall definitely someone to keep an eye on. But from a defensive side of the ball, the defenders were everything that we expected them to be, forcing multiple turnovers, 2 interceptions, 1 pick six, a fumble, and a punt block for a touchdown. So our number 1 defense on the week ended up being the number 1 defense on the week as we expected. So very good showing from DC overall. I think this one went pretty much as we anticipated. DC just a better overall team. The Dragons not bad, definitely hung in there. If they can maintain and stay healthy, I think that they can rebound. They're going to play the Vipers this next week, and the Vipers looked absolutely terrible. So I think the Dragons have a good chance of being able to turn things around in week 2. But overall, the Defenders look to be one of the strongest teams in the XFL, and if they can continue their solid performance like this, they should have a great chance at making it to the championship. But anyway, as I said, if you guys want to replay this game, click that link in the description, and you can see a condensed version where I cut out all of the fluff between the plays. So if you want to just get straight into the action, that's there for you. And if you guys are looking for rankings, waiver wire, trade tips, everything that you can imagine, there's also a link in the description for my website at fantasyaddictionnetwork.com. You can go there and get all that information for absolutely no charge and keep updated on your fantasy team throughout the XFL season. Anyway, thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.